faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. These amazing strangers from the planet Krypton, now seen sitting with Superman!
Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of the podcast that I'm kind of tentatively titling, Sitting with Superman. If anyone has seen the cover for All-Star Superman, there's this amazing panel by Frank Quitely where Superman's sitting on a cloud and he's inviting you to sit with him. And that's what this podcast is. This is getting to know the fans and the people who have decided to sit with Superman for a little bit and share some of his stories and the lives of those people who have been affected by this character, because I feel like it's something people can listen to, people can enjoy a bit in this world today, bring a bit of hope, bring a bit of positivity, and get to know the fandom of a character who is normally seen by the mass culture as not nearly as popular as someone like Batman or even Spider-Man these days. So we're fighting for the little guy, aka the big guy, the biggest guy in all of comics, but who knows, underdogs are weird. And joining me today is someone kind of fitting, talking about Superman. We'd have to get an actual Kryptonian, Superman himself. Little story for everyone. I was on Twitter one day, just scrolling through, and I just paused for a second when something got retweeted onto my timeline. And it was this really striking picture of Superman standing in the forest atop what looked like a rock, with water passing by him, and it looked like a movie poster. First glance, you think, oh, is this a fan edit? Is this what? It was a cosplayer. I was like, oh, okay. Who is this guy? Take a look at his page. Amazing photographs. Amazing community work. Bringing Superman to life in a way most fans don't ever get to do. Immediately, I'm like, for this podcast, for this way to kick off, there is no person better in this entire world to try and talk about the joy and inspiration behind this fictional character in long underwear than Superman himself. Long introduction out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, the amazing, the unstoppable Jonathan Belle. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thank you very much for that. That was really kind of you to say all those words. I appreciate it.
I've got some time to fill, who knows? Get out the outro of the way. But yeah, so before we get into this proper, I'm just going to say is Superman has such a big impact and you're doing a lot of work with this character. Where does that kind of start? How far do you go back with Superman, to get to the root of all this?
Well, I would say Superman, he's always been he's always been my favorite superhero, so I would say in my early childhood, watching Superman the animated series and watching the Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman, that was something I had to watch religiously. But I think the cartoon really, and also comic books before that cartoon, it's always been something I've gravitated towards because he was just a good guy and he wanted to do good things in the world. So that was always something I gravitated more towards than Batman, trying to scare everybody and beat everybody up. I just gravitated more towards wanting to be an example and try to help people. So that's why Superman always stuck with me, honestly.
Right, and I guess that's interesting because a lot of children normally go the other way with Batman because he's the cool one. Superman's got a day job, but Batman doesn't have to go to work. He gets Morgan Freeman to do it all. So I guess maybe I'll ask you, does that extend deeper into your childhood? Were you always looking for other figures of when some kids say they want to be a firefighter or something like that? Were you always looking for examples of public good?
I would say public good, helping people out, trying to be an example. I was raised a Christian, so it's the whole part of trying to be better person and help out other people as well. So that kind of always stuck. And then there's, here comes Superman, which is, the example of wanting to be just wanting to be an example and be a good person for everybody.
So when you go to school, you say you were raised as a Christian. Was that strictly home, or will you also go to a Christian school as well?
Honestly, I was homeschooled my whole life, so I've never been in a public school. K through 12 was spent homeschooled.
Ah, that's really interesting. Like, so how did that feed into, I guess, with your enjoyment of comic books and the TV shows? Was that like an escape from the homeschool, or did that help? Because I imagine, obviously, there's a direct link for a lot of people between Christ and Superman. Was that a correlation that attracted you, or was it like seen as, oh, this is something different than the environment I'm at home?
It was kind of the same. I think it was more of a kind of joining the two together in like an aspect to be, just like the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, stuff like that. Just, I think the epitome of what Superman embodies is just wanting to be a better person, either for himself and for other people. And it's something that I always try to aspire to be like.
Right. Again, I was like, talking to you, man, it's just making me question how bad my life is like. Oh, just got this guy on the show who's just gonna make everything just rain with like, absolutely golden, heroic light. So I guess we start that at a young age. Animated series, obviously, classic, and then the comics. Do you have any earliest memories of like the early comic books you might have read, or any particular stories that stood out to you back then before you really matured into like fandom?
No, honestly, I didn't even really recognize the titles as much as I probably should have. It was more of just going and reading, or trying to just look at the pictures and pretty much let my imagination, wander away with me for the most part. There wasn't really a lot of series or anything that I was stuck on as a kid, because I just wanted to pretty much just look at the pictures and make my own stories up in my head for the most part.
Yeah, that's good with probably why comic books are such a good reading medium, is they have that immediate hook. Is like, even if the story isn't that good, the artwork can be like something you've never seen before, with like these amazing characters. I guess that's a good question as well, is do you think, especially because you cosplay the character, maybe we can get into specifics of more of that later, but as a child, what did you think of like Superman's costume, and like was that an attractive factor to you, of like the cape and everything, or did you see him as a lot of people do, as like, oh, he's a goofy, silly, he's not cool as Batman?
Oh, I do like fashion a lot, and I mean the costume too. I mean, with the cape and everything, it really did appeal to me as well. I mean, I don't think, and my mom will probably have to validate this, but I don't think I used to go around, with a towel wrapped around my neck like a cape or anything. But I did like what it symbolized because it was different, and I kind of always like just trying to be a little bit different than everybody else.
All right, so you were homeschooled, and then taking your fandom with that. Where do you go after that? Like, where does that transition into maybe like work, or what's the next stage in your young adult life?
I mean, pretty much. So Superman, it was always just like, wearing T-shirts or jewelry, and, watching the shows, the comics. It was just always something that I've had throughout just growing up, or like everybody that meets me or knew me, like one of the top things they would know off the bat is, I'm a big fan of Superman and he's my favorite superhero. I let no time pass letting people know that.
I mean, straight to the point. I give you that.
Exactly. So that's just kind of how it's always been. It's that you meet me, hey, this is Jonathan, and he really likes Superman, and that's pretty much how it's always been growing up, even to this day.
Yeah, and I guess if you had to say now, do you think your love as Superman has deepened as you've got older, or that kind of childlike feeling maybe has faded away into a different kind of appreciation?
Good question. I'd say that it's pretty much relatively the same, honestly. Because, I could say like from being before how I would dream about wanting to fly and things of that nature, as of now, it's more of like the symbol and the ideal of who he is and how he can impact people's lives.
Mm-hmm. And how would you, I guess the other question like relating to that is, why Superman specifically then, when you could, if you want to stretch it, you could just give that to someone like Wonder Woman or Green Arrow or any number of heroes. Why do you think it's the Man of Steel that sticks out to you?
Probably because of the flight thing. That's one. I mean, I do love the whole idea of being able to fly. That's one reason. And then the other reason is just that he just genuinely wants to be a good person. Mm-hmm. And even though like people, tease and make fun of him for that, calling him a Boy Scout and all this stuff, it's always something that resonated within me, because there are people that just genuinely need a good person around. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I totally get that. It's a comfort thing, right? It's just a nice, it's a nice feeling to have, to know that there's a character that is the best of us. Exactly.
And, just trying to make an impact in this world and be the best version of myself that I can. And I think Superman is a great example of that he's always trying to be the best person he can.
Right. I guess, maybe then following up from there, if you had to like say, this is something I definitely did because I was like influenced by Superman, apart from the obvious dressing up for Superman, what do you have any things in your life where you'd be like, Superman like influenced this slightly in like your decision making?
Pretty much all it's like a constant. It's pretty much like a constant thing, like how I interact with people. Because to me, like, honestly, one of the values that I hold true, or try to hold true every day, is, the golden rule, like treat everybody how you would want to be treated. And there's another one that really stands out with me too, is to treat people innocent until proven guilty, as opposed to, treating people guilty until proven innocent. And I think Superman really is a shining example of that. Is how he always tries to give somebody the benefit of the doubt first, as opposed to, automatically assuming that they're going to screw something up. Yeah. So those are all types of examples that I do try to use in my everyday life, because I know personally, I like when people treat me, like I'm going to not mess up or do something correct, as opposed to if they just assume the worst in me right off the bat.
Whereas, again, anyone listening to this, assume the worst of me, because unlike Jonathan here, I'm going to let you know. What about, see, that's interesting, because, okay, I guess I'm going to maybe go a bit deeper into that. Let's just get a little philosophical here. Do you feel like, if you're going to take this, because yes, I'm with you 100%. Superman is the character who will always give a hand first rather than a fist. And part of the reason why he can do that is because not a lot of things can hurt him. I think Grant Morrison said it best, where he's just like, this is a guy, when you're invulnerable, you can just be totally relaxed. Like, you don't have to puff out your chest or like flex your muscles. He could just be totally calm and chill and just inviting. That works for Superman, but do you feel like there is a risk there for people, or do you feel like for like people letting people too close, or do you feel like maybe it's worth it just for the moral ground?
Well, I mean, everybody's comfortable with themselves and how vulnerable they could be, and I do feel like it is a part of being vulnerable. I mean, opening yourself up to try to have an experience with somebody, no matter how quote unquote bulletproof you think you are, to some extent, you're going to have to be vulnerable in one way or another. And I guess that just really depends on your level of comfortability. I mean, there are some times when I am more vulnerable than others when it comes to dealing with people, but for the most part, I'm pretty confident in myself to know when, I can be that way with certain people.
Right. And I guess there's an inherent confidence you kind of have to have, maybe segue into this with the cosplay thing, that you go, I've done it myself as well. I know how it feels. You get a kind of buzz, you get a kind of rush from it, but it's also, you have to kind of get used to, okay, people are going to be staring at me, maybe taking photos, or maybe like saying comments that you got to have that kind of confidence. where does that start? Where does the cosplay thing come from?
Well, the cosplay thing, so pretty much like I've always liked Superman, like as we know, but I've never really could picture myself wearing like the original Christopher Reeve suit. And it wasn't until Man of Steel came out when I saw that suit that I thought, okay, that suit, because, you know, I do like photography and everything too. So I thought that suit would be more realistic for photos. And that's when I decided to try and find like a good suit to do photography with. Before that, I used to just wear a sweatshirt that had like a long red cape I attached to it and like practice doing photography that way while I was trying to find the Man of Steel suit. So, but the cosplay aspect, I pretty much started that because I knew I could find a good suit with the Man of Steel when that came out. And that's how that whole thing came about.
Okay, yeah. So like, you had your own Action Comics New 52 where he's walking around in the t-shirt with the cape.
Yeah,
before he gets you had that origin in real life.
Yeah.
You are
that's
Superman.
Like exactly it. Yeah,
Like,
and that worked out pretty well too because I'm like, you know what, that was pretty awesome how they made that happen with his, you know, his jeans and the cape with the boots and, you know, and it's like, that's something that I could do. And I, you know, started working on it.
Right. And I like the touches there was like his boots would always have like holes in them because they're like, he'd run too fast or like he'd jump too high. It very much brought it back to like the golden age, rough and tumble, champion of the oppressed Superman, who then got elevated into like the thing when you went through that journey of Superman on a budget to Superman on a slightly higher budget.
Pretty much, yeah. That makes total sense.
I guess we've spoken about like the fashion, the photography, which kind of ties into the cosplays. Where does your passion for photography come from?
Well, I've always had a passion for like digital graphics. I went to like an adult school to learn like Photoshop and everything, like a trade school. But before I even went to that, I was using Photoshop 7 like a long time ago, back in like the early 2000s when like Photoshop pretty much was first coming out. And I liked the computer. I liked learning how to manipulate photos and put my own ideas on stuff. But I never really did photography because I just didn't have a camera. And it wasn't until probably 2009 when I decided I should just get my own camera to take my own photos to edit, as opposed to, you know, just looking online, trying to find stock photos and things of that nature. So the photography part came for me to be kind of like a one-man show of making my own photos to edit, as opposed to having to use other people's stuff.
Right. It was like an artistic expression.
Pretty much.
All right. Was there any other avenues with that in like your childhood? Were you like particularly artistic, or was that more recent thing as you got older?
I think I've kind of always had an artistic kind of deal. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles, so we were, you know, there's just fashion everywhere. People were always used to being different. Like, you know, if I wore that suit back home, you know, walking around Los Angeles, nobody will look at you twice because it's something that everybody is just used to in California, you know. So that's a big that I've always kind of grown up around. If you want to express yourself and be different, then, you know, nobody's gonna bother you about it. But that's only my experience because I grew up where that is so common. If I were to grow up somewhere else, I could only imagine I might have a different mindset about it. You
had your own Smallville.
Yeah, pretty much.
Before you went into the big city where everything was weird.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much where that came from. Is I just kind of grew up knowing that I could dress or do whatever, or dress however I wanted, and I never really felt like I was ashamed or get any flack for it at all, because I just didn't have that. I didn't have that type of mentality. Because there's so many people, you know, that just did it regardless.
We're still not going to go cross the line of the trunks, sadly. I like the trunks, man.
Yeah, I mean, you probably won't ever catch me wearing those. I'm just going to say that right now. Yeah, I'm not going to say the N-word because if the minute I say that, then I'll have them on like next year, you know. They say never, but I'm not going to use that word with it because, that's just something I don't see happening. It could happen, but I seriously doubt it.
Fair enough. I guess, all right, so specifics of you mentioned Man of Steel kind of influenced that. I do want to talk about that in a second, but before we get to that, have there been, maybe this is getting into the geeky air territory, they've kind of established a love for Superman. What would you say were like the stories or the specific, if you can get as specific as possible, that formed your Superman appreciation like as it is today? Like what were your like holy texts or holy shows?
I really like Superman Birthright, and I really, really love Superman Grounded. That was such a good, I really love that one because it pretty much shows him as like a human being, you know, how he refuses to fly or use his powers and just kind of walk around, the United States. So I think that's one of my favorite stories. And then, Superman, the Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman, watching that show, like when that was on growing up, that was a show like I had to watch every week, and as well as the cartoon. And I think the whole animated series too, that just showcasing him on a day-to-day basis, like that really cemented my love for Superman also. Smallville was another one. But as far as the comics, I could just honestly say, like, I think Birthright and Kingdom Come is another one. But Birthright, Kingdom Come, and Grounded, those are like three of my top three that I really love, those storylines.
Now, like, Grounded is like, for anyone who hasn't read that story, I think you did a very good job explaining it. But also, I'm just kind of like, you just live that right now. I know a lot of fans who like their stories, Jonathan. I don't ever see people actually living them, but holy crap, dude, you made it.
Yeah, I mean that's what that's why I love it so much, because it's something that I feel like I can do. Because in that storyline, he's pretty much is like a guy that just walks around in the suit and just helps people out when they can. And I like that because I feel like it's something I can do. I could wear it and just be a good person when I can.
Yeah, and it's very it brings it back to again what Siegel and Schuster were going with this is a guy who would like early Superman comics. He's not fighting monsters or anything. He's fighting landlords.
Yeah, pretty much like real people with real problems, trying to help them out. And then like a lot of other that stuff came later with like robots or aliens and things of that nature.
And that's all great, but there's the heart to it as well. Is what makes Superman good is you can kind of do anything with him, like you say. I guess the immediate question is, do you feel like you're kind of missing out on more stories like Grounded, where he is just kind of less focused on the super and more on the man, kind of helping out the community?
Yeah, and that's why I like Superman Earth 1, that whole series, how he's like, discovering his powers and everything and trying to be a person. I do really like stories that showcase him as like, doing his whole learning curve, trying to figure out exactly who he is. I mean, on the other hand, I do also like, stories that show him in all of his glory as well, but it's just I could relate to more with his human side because, I am a human.
Yeah, I mean, you see some of those photos, man, you're flying. So we have photographic evidence of you literally hovering over the ground with your photographic wizardry. I guess, like, with that in mind, because you mentioned Birthright as well, and kind of like the whole learning himself and that. Do you feel like, I guess something you can relate to with Superman, just from what you've told me, is the whole idea of like this kid growing up kind of like not on his own in like the thing, and then moving into like the big city trying to help people, like the Birthright, the Smallville to even the animated series kind of has that thing, is like the whole timeless story really of the boy becomes the man. Is that something you feel like you can resonate with? Because even Man of Steel does that.
Yeah, and I think it is too. Once I left home and, especially just being out on my own, I feel like that also because, well, I should say more like when I got the suit, I first got the suit when I decided to quit my job, you know. So I quit a really good job and started out trying to figure out how I was going to do the Superman stuff. So I literally quit my job, gave up my apartment, and van lifed in Seattle, Washington, trying to figure out how I was going to make this work. So I pretty much started from, you know, the ground zero with this whole thing. So it did really help a lot, you know, to have that kind of as a reference to know that, you know, like, hey, this is how it's just going to have to go, you know?
How do you, I don't even imagine, like, how do you make a leap like that?
I just felt like it was about time, and I stopped running from, you know, what I wanted to do. I've always felt like I was put here to, like, you know, help people. So, and it's something I've always done, you know, growing up, but at the same time, it's not something that I felt like I took to the level as if I should have. So, you know, I like doing photography. I like doing creativity stuff, but I never took a job doing it because I knew I would not like the stuff I would either make for people or things of that nature. So I just never did. And now it's just, I feel like it's time for me to actually start being the person that I should be and stop running from that. And that's when I decided to make that leap to this.
That is just like, again, every time, because I've seen you talk about this story before, but like for anyone else listening, I was just like, this guy literally decided that he will become a real life Superman and just help people while still doing these amazing works of art at the same time. It's really mind blowing to see someone take like these lessons from freaking cartoon character. It fucking means something, and like you make it mean something. No, but seriously, dude, you make it mean something in real life, and that is important. That is just like fantastic.
Yeah, because, you know, like we were talking earlier, I think a lot of people just kind of, they think he's boring or they want to sleep on him all the time because they just like, oh, you know, he's just so powerful. And to me, the whole powerful aspect just never ever crosses my mind, like at all, because it's not about how powerful he is. It's about how he connects with other people and, you know, tries to bring out the best in people. And that's what I want to try to do, is to help inspire people and motivate people to, you know, to do what they want to do and bring out the best in them. And I honestly don't think that there's enough people in this world that try to do that with everybody. Yeah.
I feel that's a good point as well. It's just like, for anyone, to give my take on this, like for anyone who's like wondering, oh, why did they make Superman so powerful? It's like, they've depowered him before. The reason why Superman is so powerful isn't so he can punch people. The reason he's so powerful is so that he can take any hit in the world and then respond and say, you didn't have to do that. I forgive you.
You know, I've never heard that before, but that is a really great point, honestly. I like that.
He's there to be the guy who will always be like, that didn't bother me. It's fine. You made a mistake.
I like that. It's a good analogy.
There you have it, folks.
Good description. It's a good description, I meant. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I guess then, kind of going into the specifics of, all right, so you make this decision, you make this grand, like, okay, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to go through this, very much biblical pilgrimage. Like, again, you're living out all these lives, and it's quite fantastic. They need to make a movie about you. They're kind of making a movie about Henry Cavill. Let's get you to fucking do it. So like we've got this idea of, okay, I'm gonna help people. What were the challenges of when you started doing it? Like, was there a learning curve?
Well, let's see. So I quit my job in like November of 2016. And in May of 2017, I was finally able to afford the suit because it cost it was about $1,400.
Yeah, these things ain't cheap.
Yeah, so I had to save up for that. And it was supposed to take like a maximum of 2 months to get. It took me 7 months to get that suit. So that was one huge, huge learning curve, was to have patience with a lot of stuff. Because I honestly did not, I mean, just stuff on the guys in that made it, that, he didn't, was just unforeseen, and this and that, and something else came up. So that was a big learning curve for me, is to be patient with this type of stuff. That was the first thing. And then another thing was the logistics of figuring out the photos, where to change. Like I changed in my van all the time, things of that nature. But
you had your own Batmobile.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so that was it was something else, like learning how to be patient. And then after that, learning, when and how to put it on and do the photography and this, and it was just a big learning curve.
Right. I guess, so we've got the whole, these things, like I've gone through that as well. It's just like you're given a time frame, normally add on to that time frame and then keep adding, and then updates are slow and infrequent. But when you get it, it doesn't matter because, oh my God, it's fantastic. I guess maybe that's the thing is, just a quick kind of trivial question just hit me is, is that the route you would go to, like, your ideal Superman costume? Or being a guy who's into design as itself, do you have any ideas of what you would do if you had to make your own, like, from scratch?
I have no idea. Like, yeah, I mean, I wish I knew how to do all that stuff, but I don't. And especially right now, like, I just don't have the room or the space for it. So it's not like I can do that my own. But yeah, I mean, I have some ideas to make different types of suits. I just have to find somebody to commission them to do it.
You've done the Superboy variant as well, which is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm trying to work on like a Green Lantern variant one. And then, like, I don't know if you're keeping up with the Justice League, the newer ones, but there's like this person that has like a white Superman and it's like a white and gold one. Like, I think that would be pretty dang rad to wear also. So I'm trying to figure out somebody that I can commission to do that. And then I would, because the Green Lantern is like my second favorite superhero. So I would like to do like a combination of the Superman suit, but with the Green Lantern emblem and everything.
Oh, that'd be really cool. I guess throw that out there. Is Green Lantern, where's your history with him?
It's pretty much just like the whole willpower thing. Like First Flight is one of my favorite books from his series. Hal Jordan is sorry about that. Hal Jordan has probably got to be my favorite Green Lantern. But I like the whole willpower and trying to overcome things that scare you. So that's where the Green Lantern comes from. And I believe like with the whole willpower and the hope from Superman, like it could be really great teachable moments with that. So that's what I'm trying to work on now.
So there you have it, DC. We need more team ups between Hal and Superman. There's a buddy cop movie for you.
Yeah, you can imagine how dope that would be.
They can't. They're not struggling to make a Green Lantern movie, struggling to make a Superman movie. There you go. We just pay us. We're just coming up with all these ideas. Oh my God, Howard get on his fucking nerves so much. This Clark's just standing there dealing with like this guy who's like, "Don't worry, guys, I've got it." Gets like slapped in the face by Darkseid, and Superman's just like, "Yeah, you've got it, buddy. Great job."
Yeah, he already gets on Batman's nerves quite a bunch.
But Superman's more tolerant. That's why we love him. That's why Superman getting a podcast on this channel. Fuck Batman. Bat would be out. No one's going. You know how many different looks you'd get if you tried to do this as Batman? people like terrified of you. You run across the street.
Yeah, and also because I don't wear a mask, so people just see my face.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That's important. As much as the glasses gets criticized, it's important that he doesn't wear a mask.
I totally think so too, because it's a part of being vulnerable.
Like you see everything there. Is when he's talking to you, you see his eyes, you see his face, you see his smile. You know it's not fake. You know it's genuine, and that inspires people, but also pisses Lex Luthor off. So that's important to the character, and then the glasses kind of just have to justify that, because you can't exactly have him wear a mask as Clark Kent.
Exactly. And it's funny, like I've had experiences like that too. Cause when I'm not wearing a suit, look like a normal person. And I literally one day I was this was actually this year. I went to a coffee shop before I went to the Seattle Comic-Con. I went in there, got a coffee and everything, and like normal clothes. And then I was waiting for the Uber to take me to the convention. I go back in the same coffee shop and the same people were working there, but I showed up in my suit. And the barista looked at me and she's like, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram. You were like so cool, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Thank you." But at the same time, I'm like, I was literally just in here like an hour ago and you had no idea who I was.
Oh my God, dude. You just legitimized 80 years of comics.
I was like, and I had a friend with me and she couldn't believe it. She was just like, wow.
It's
like,
real.
yes, we both, yeah, that whole like, it's real thing was literally written all over her face. Cause she's just like, wow, we just in here. And then now it's just like, oh, you're this guy. I'm like, okay, guess it's not a myth, you know, but that just goes to show like people, you know, they pass you up a lot. It just goes to show how people view people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's like you're just anyone else until you're suddenly like someone. You're Superman.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like a little odd experience.
Have you felt then, I guess, like comparing that, like now that this has become part of your everyday life, do you find that those experiences have kind of changed view of people? Like, has being Superman changed how you view the world compared to when you first started?
No, I mean it's always a mindset that I try to keep. You know, it hasn't changed my view at all. It just reminds me that I still need to strive to be that person, regardless of how people view me or not, or how I might view other people.
Right. And have you had because obviously no matter how much good you can do, there's always going to be some bad. Is like, how many of the experience have you had about like you've gone out in the suit and something like some assholes said something or whatever? Like how do you deal with that?
Oh yeah, that happens, you know, from time to time. How do I deal with it? I just tune it out. I mean, people are always going to say what they want to say and do things like that, honestly. And, you know, it's just part of how I was raised. Like, I know people are going to talk crap, you know, I know people are going to not always agree with what I'm doing or, you know, like what I'm doing. And it's just part of it. But I don't like to give into that because there are so many more people that do like what I'm doing to talk with, as opposed to spending time about people that don't see what I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, I'm not saying that it happens, but like, well, like, you know, like you could have the best day in the world and one tiny thing could happen and then your whole day is ruined because you want to think about that instead of all the good stuff that happened. And that's kind of how it is with the suit, is that I'm just trying to train your mindset, right? With, you know, you could have the best day ever in it. And if one little thing happens, are you going to let that ruin your day or not? And that's just kind of like the whole thing. And I think that's something that you just have to learn how to do, you know, within yourself, whether with anything, with, you know, anything, just to learn how to not let negative things bother you as much as the positive stuff.
Right. It's the hardest thing to do because there's not one of those things where like you say, oh, I'm going to hit a certain age and then I'm going to be fully mature. It's like, you're always going to have that battle between yourself of just like, there's always going to be a voice in your head. It's like, why the characters are so important is you can have your Superman and you can have your Lex Luthor. So you can have your Superman think, oh, I should see the better of this person. And you got little voice in the back of your head, the Lex Luthor is like, oh, fuck that guy.
Exactly. And it's just like, you know, and that goes to show too, like, you're exactly right. Because when you're having a great day, it's extremely easy to like pull up all the motivational quotes in the world. It's extremely easy to be in a great headspace when everything is going fine and dandy in your life. You're just like, oh, everything is fine and dandy in my life right now. Blah, 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 blah. But it takes when something negative happens in your life, when you actually have to apply it, that is the real challenge. And that's when you have to like pretty much put your money where your mouth is, so to speak.
Yeah, your true character comes out when you're tested.
Exactly.
I think that's a good like ideal to keep towards, because that's another thing with Superman is like the dude freaking died. he came back and he was still. I mean, Justice League may argue differently, but he was all right when he came back in the comics. He wasn't killing people or like threatening Batman. He had a mullet.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I mean,
he died. Yeah,
that
he died.
trial and tribulation. I guess that's a good example. Actually, is the whole for you growing up so like in a Christian household, being homeschooled, death of Superman and like the rebirth of Superman and all these things with Superman, with like how Jor-El is portrayed as like, especially in the Christopher Reeve movies, as like a Christ-like God and like Christ-like figure. Man of Steel brings up a lot of religious imagery from Zack Snyder's background. Is how deep does that run between your view of religion and your view of Superman?
It doesn't really, I wouldn't say it has like a deep tie-in with religion, more of the fact of like having good morals.
Right.
Yeah. So basically it's more of just trying to have good morals and just be a good person, as opposed to really tying in with religion.
Yeah.
I should say. You know what I mean?
More like a foundational thing rather than like, this is how everything happened kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I get you. So we've got basically like an overview of most of these things, but there is one thing I think you might be alright you'll be mentioned, but before we start recording we have a little chit chat. You threw a little nugget out there. I'm gonna have to cash that in now, because that's an interesting story. Is you a police officer, sir?
I was a police officer for probably 3 months or so. I went through the whole training, which was 9 months, and then I ended up quitting because I didn't like it. And pretty much how that happened, I was 21. I never went to college, so I wanted a good career job, and back then it was a good paying job, so I took it because I wanted to actually see if I could do it without going to college, and two is because I thought I could help people, and I figured out real quickly that wasn't the way I wanted to help people. So about 3 months in, I quit, and never looked back since.
Yeah, it's one of those things where just like, I can imagine is you have this picture in your head. You're like, oh, cop, superheroes, that's like Commissioner Gordon. Oh yeah, I know cops. The reality of it is completely different, and a lot of systems in place where most of the time you're not helping people.
Exactly. So I figured out real quick that's not what I wanted to do. And yeah, that was a while ago now.
That's just one of those things, but like something with Superman as well, as he kind of has this as a character, is when institutions fail you, or like your perceptions of things. Like he's always got this thing with Lex, and he's always trying to see the good in him, but he keeps disappointing him, and over is like, when you do put yourself out there, when you have this like morality of always give people a chance, always believe the best in people, never guilty prove innocent, how do you I guess reconcile when people do let you down, and where do you go from there? Is that like a time where you just cut off ties and you realize this person's toxic, or do you still attempt to maybe give them another chance? I don't know.
I'll give everybody a chance at first, but honestly, it's you come to a certain age. There's just like that quote, I think it's from Kingdom Come, where it says like, there is a right and wrong in the world, and the difference is not that hard to establish between the two. I mean, that's not how the quote goes, but that's the gist of the quote. And you'd believe like we're adults, kids, people know like when they do something, people know if they go back on their word, people know when they try to irritate somebody else, like you just know. And so even if somebody does things unintentionally and it truly is like an accident, or if they genuinely are sorry about it. Like, everybody gets a chance. Everybody gets a second chance. But there comes a point in your life where, like if something's not going how you'd want it to, or if somebody doesn't want to, change or whatever, then you just have to decide within yourself, like, if this is somebody that I want to continue getting to know. And honestly, it's kind of been on like a person basis, but straight up, like the whole guilt, innocent until proven guilty thing. I give everybody a chance first, and then I make it very known, because I like using my words and communicating with people. I make it very known, like, what it is that happened and why it upset me and this and that. And then people choose to do it again. That's on them. Yeah,
you have to. But again, more people acted like that, a lot less problems in the world if people just spoke to each other. Surprisingly, considering one of the universal things humanity always invents is language, you think we'd use it.
Exactly. But, people don't like to try to communicate, or they think it's funny, or for whatever odd reason it is, but yeah, there's just some things I don't have tolerances for. And when I find out when people do that on purpose, that's just the end of that story there.
Right. I guess maybe bringing in a more positive example of a way you've kind of joined and helped propel this not recent movement, but been gaining more and more steam, which I'm really happy to see. Being part of the Black cosplay community. For many people listening, because this is audio, I'm going to leave links and stuff in the chat, but you are a Superman of color. You are representing Clark Kent Superman, not Velzard or any, thing. Just, you are Clark Kent Superman, who just so happens to have a darker skin tone than you're normally used to. And that means a lot to people.
Well, I mean, I'd hope it does. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I didn't really want to go with the whole Valzad way, or the Earth 23 Obama, president, because I wanted to let people know, it's okay to be who you want to be. And, there are other people that try to put me in that box, and, I just tell them, hey, you could believe whatever you want to believe. That's not what I'm doing, but you want to try to put it there. That's fine. But yeah, it's Superman, period. Not a version or a different version. It's Superman, because, it's, you be who you want to be. You don't have to, if I liked Belzad that much, then I would have done that, but it wasn't about him. That really didn't exist when I was a kid. So it's always been the Superman aspect of the symbol and what it represents, as opposed to the color of the person that's trying to do it. Everybody likes Superman for different reasons. Some person that, was a child that saw the very first Christopher Reeves Superman movie, and to them, Christopher Reeves is Superman, period. There are other people that grew up and, there might have been a kid when Man of Steel came out, and now Henry Cavill is their Superman, period. But for me, it's always been about the symbol and what it means. And so I just try to find like-minded people that believe in the symbol and what actual being super means, as opposed to who is wearing the suit, if that makes any sense.
No, I'm totally with you. It's got the character and this identity of the Superman has existed for so long now. It's hard to remember a time where Superman isn't just part of American and worldwide culture. He's such a big phenomenon. He created the genre of superhero. When you look at the Marvel movies and making billions of dollars, it's just they are so seeped in our world, and all of that comes from Superman. It doesn't come from the fact of where Clark Kent grew up, really. It's about his experiences, and his experiences as a person aren't tied to his skin color. They're tied to him and being moral. And I think you represent that really well. I have a friend called T. Sunning Spidey. He's a Spider-Man cosplayer. And he portrays Peter Parker. But because of his skin tone, people used to always identify him as Miles Morales. And he had to overcome that in much the same way you're doing, because the character for kids and for anyone really the point of putting on this costume is you're putting on an identity. That's why it's not there. It's why Clark Kent doesn't go around in his regular clothes. It's because he's putting on an identity to do something, which I feel like is really powerful because everyone can do that no matter who you are.
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And actually, no, I never met him in person, but he is one of the first people that I met in the cosplay community when I started wearing a suit, and he's a pretty cool guy.
That's fantastic. There we go, crossing over Marvel and DC right now. I guess, like, have you had, like, because you've got, some of your photos have got, like, a number of retweets, which I could only imagine for one of my crappy, like, posts. But, like, have you had people, like, what would you say, like, your favorite fan interactions, if you have any, of, like, people getting to know you and letting you know what kind of impact you have? You don't have to be humble here, because I think you deserve it, because you have helped a lot of people.
You know, I honestly don't have a favorite time, and it actually still blows me away. Like, every time I receive some type of art from somebody, and it's of myself, or every time I get a DM or something like that, every single time, it honestly blows me away, because, like, this, for instance, with drawings or paintings or something, like, somebody had to look at me in that suit long enough to make something out of it, and then, like, send it to me in hopes that I would like it, or at least, like, try to do a good enough job. And, you know, me doing photography and editing and stuff, like, it's hard enough just sitting at a computer all day doing things, or, like, I don't draw, or even an iPad if you use the iPad to draw. So it's just really, really, like, humbling and flattering for somebody to take the time and effort to use my likeness, or to use me to make a piece of art. It seriously gets me every time. And, like, when people DM me saying, like, oh, you know, I wish I could, you know, be more like you, and you don't care what other people think, and you could do this and that. That gets me every time too, because, you know, the people say, like, phones are an easy thing to hide through now. You know, if you want to, like, send a message or troll or do this or do that, you have your phone. People don't really know who you are. But it's a lot easier to be a troll and to write and say a lot of negative things online than it is to try to be positive, because, you know, people, there's stuff you don't agree with all the time. And it's easier to say, like, I don't agree with that, than to say, like, or then to find stuff that you actually do like and agree with it. So people that actually take the time out of their day to write a nice message, it, you know, it's stuff I don't take for granted, because that just doesn't happen that often.
Right. It's, again, it's just, you could, anyone listen to this just be like, oh my god, that's a Superman quote. That is such a good mentality to have about these things. Despite how much reach, and I'm sure you've had loads of these by now, but to hear you say that, I'm sure for a lot of fans would be, like, really, really impactful. Especially because one thing I really want to highlight is you're very interactive with your followers and everything. You're always getting people to ask you questions and stuff, and that's, like, such a nice thing, because it makes people feel connected to you as a person rather than just an abstract photograph. Like, what was your mentality when you wanted to, like, promote that as much as you do?
Well, because, okay, so I am an artist, you know, and then there's the whole Superman aspect on top of it. But I want people also to know me for me, which is why, like, you know, my @name on Twitter is Jonathan Bell. It's not like Superman, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that. Although, like, it does say Superman there as a second thing, but, like, my @ and everything, I want people to know that. I want people, when they see Jonathan Bell, the first image that pops in their head is the Superman symbol. And that's why I try to be friendly and be, you know, talkative and talk to people that might tune in and follow me, because I don't want to have that whole, like, I'm better than anybody. Yes, my photos and stuff are really cool, and yes, I do a lot of amazing stuff, but, you know, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because I want to prove to people, if I can do it, then you can do it too. Like, if I, with me and how I look and how I have a beard and how I wear my hair and all the stuff that doesn't look like you're typical Clark Kent. I want people to know, like, if I can do it, then so can you. If you have something that you want to do, I want to be an example. And that's why I try to document and say as much stuff as I can while I'm on this journey to let people know, like, hey, it's nothing's always as easy as it might seem. And there are ups and downs and things of that nature. And just talking with people and sharing in my personal experience with stuff, I feel like it could help people realize, like, it's not always going to be easy, but it can be worth it if you keep doing it.
Yeah, and I guess that explains why you've got the tutorial video series you do on your own YouTube channel.
Yeah, and that all started because when I first started doing photography, and there were so many people I would DM on Instagram or Facebook, and I'd ask questions like, hey, like, where is this location at? And, what type of lens? And nobody, they would just leave me on read, like they, and seriously, like, because, their whole mentality is like, oh, I can't tell this person my secrets because then he's going to go do it. He might do it better than me. He might get more likes than me, or da-da-da-da. And my whole mentality is, the more people that I can help share, do stuff, like the more people that I can help influence, the more that their creativity flourishes, but honestly, because that's just like a huge pet peeve of mine, is trying to keep stuff and information to yourself out of selfishness. It's not good for you in the long run. Yeah, in the short run, you might have the one photo with the location and nobody else has it. Or you might know how to do this cool tutorial or edit, or you might know how to do this cool edit that nobody else knows how, but they're going to find out how to do it. And then you're going to be the jerk that they could either, I don't know. I'm going to try to articulate it because this really gets me riled up with this stuff. I just don't like when people feel like they have to hide every single thing they're doing because they think it's going to help them in the long run. When I truly believe, like, if you want to get to where you want to go in the long run, you got to be a people person, like a person for the people, and help people grow along the way instead of stifle them. I mean, you got to this platform where people look up to you and ask you questions about how you do your stuff, and you choose not to interact with them because you're afraid of them overtaking you. If there was somebody that came out tomorrow that looked like me and wore their hair like me and had a beard and stuff, and they became, like, quote unquote more popular than me, I would be happy for them, because it's not a race with things. We all have our creativity in our own different ways, and I think people just get so caught up with that because they feel like they're going to be overtaken or overthrown, or they might not be as popular, so they want to hold on to their stuff, and all that stuff that could all just, like, kick rocks. Because what I'm concerned about is trying to help and impact people as much as I can, because I know it goes further in the long run.
And it's self-defeating because those people, people asking you for that and they want to help grow because they want to know new techniques, is specifically, say, for cosplay. You're in a community and you're in a very new and messy and fragile community that's still kind of figuring things out. You want it to grow. You want everyone to be as good as possible because there's your bloody new audience, because then they'll recommend you because they like your stuff, and if they get bigger, then you're gonna get bigger. It's like everyone helps each other as, like, a really big... It's like the Marvel versus DC figures. Marvel and DC don't hate each other. They want each other both to succeed as much as possible because it helps grow the specific thing they're trying to do.
Exactly.
That's very much the same approach as you're going here, is if the more people you tell, the more kind of this kind of art gets more popular and more people start to appreciate it, and then they check your stuff out and then get a great... Once you can understand how something's done, you can kind of appreciate the craft of it more. Because like I said, I've got one of your favorite photos I saw when I first saw it. It was the standing, like, head slightly tilted down on, like, the rock, with, like, the forest in the background. And then you did, like, a tutorial video, not on that specific photo, but it was, like, one of, like, oh, this is how I move some rocks around to get that thing. It's like, holy fuck, you put a lot of time into that. You put a lot of thought into that. I just thought you got really lucky with location at first. I was like, damn, this cheeky son of a bitch got perfect lighting. But no, it was also perfect lighting, but also perfect finagling. And, like, oh, that was just fantastic. It was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people don't realize that. They're like, "Oh, how do you get it?" I'm like, "Oh," and then I show them, I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's a lot." I'm like, "Yeah, it
It's
is."
like, maybe I don't have to get it as perfect. I'm fine with 240p. You know what? 1080p is overrated, really, if you ask me. This is more of an art form when you can't even see the photo. That's my cosplay mentality.
Yeah, it is a lot, and that's why I like trying to share with people, like, because I want people also to realize, like, it's there are people that do. Everybody does things their own way, and I'm really honored when people want to figure out how I do things, and then it's just totally up to them to decide if they want to go that route or not. But at least I gave them the view of how it's done.
Right, you gave them the keys to the Fortress of Solitude. It's up to them if they know how it bloody works.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just gonna make all the Superman analogies. So right, going maybe strictly more back to just like Man of Steel himself, specifically the film Man of Steel. Your cosplay is most, and your shot composition, I would say, out of most Superman interpretations, is the closest to that Zack Snyder mentality. Obviously, the suit design is, you're a fan of that, and it is a beautiful costume. Like the is it puff paint on the thing?
Yeah, it's puff painted.
I've puff painted suits, so I know exactly how painful that is to get that working. So absolutely, whoever made that is a gorgeous job. But yeah, so like, has that film, or that DCEU cinematic Superman, like outside the comics, where do you stand on the movies in general, I guess?
Well, I did really, really love Man of Steel, but I did not like the next two. Yeah, I just didn't really. I didn't care for them at all.
They were kind of against the message you're preaching about, like a bit too cynical.
Well, besides that, like, I really love movies as a person. Like Christopher Nolan, he's my favorite director, and like I am a movie buff, so to speak. I used to go to the movies like probably twice a week, all the time. Like I just love like movies and cinematography and editing and this and that. And those other two movies, I just didn't feel were just really decent movies as a package, and it kills me to say that because I love Superman, all this stuff. But when I'm looking at the film as a whole, I just can't bring myself to say that I like them.
Like the craft of it is what gets you.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective because a lot of people don't really call for that, but you've obviously got experience with this. You've got an eye for that kind of thing. What would you say about, because a lot of people, with the Man of Steel interpretation, and I guess compare that to the Christopher Reeve, where it's shot a little differently. It's shot a bit more like for the time compared to like the stylized Zack Snyder is. Do you prefer your Superman more stylized, or do you prefer him in a more realistic world?
I prefer it in a more realistic world. I mean, that's why I van lifed it out to Seattle, because I wanted to take those photos in like the real outside world, like that one you said with the forest and everything. I want it to be, kind of like in a realistic type way.
I get you. Again, they come out fantastic because you're actually there. And I guess maybe, do you have any specific, when you decide when you're going to shoot somewhere, do you have like ideas in mind, or like references, or like, oh, I saw this in a comic somewhere, or like just general, this would be a cool shot? Because you've put Superman in the places a lot of Superman artists and even movies never go. Like, Superman's never in the forest, but why isn't he? He looks fucking badass.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basically a fact of trying to grow my skills too as a photographer and work with like different environments and lighting and different lenses and things of that nature. I'll research some like poses. If I feel like I want to go try to do a different pose, I'll research a bunch of different Superman poses, and then I'll try to find like a new location to debut the pose, or like or something like that. So I'll go to a place and scope it out, and then I'll figure out where to set up and practice until I get the pose right.
So I guess I want to draw on a specific example because I saw this and I kind of want to get into your thoughts behind it. Is you did recreation of was it Tomasi and Gleason cover?
Right. With the S in the clouds there.
Yeah. What made you do that? Because that was fantastic.
And when I first saw that cover, I was like, I need to make this in real life, because that was just so that whole S in the clouds and everything. I'm like, wow, somehow I need to make this look like as realistic as I can. And so then I just started figuring out how I was going to make that happen, learn how to do like the clouds in Photoshop and things of that nature and the right background and stuff like that. And yeah, like it luckily just worked out. But that photo, like I would, I don't know if you know this or not, but I wasn't even actually there. I Photoshopped myself into that photo. That's like a stock photo.
There's a scoop, everyone. Exclusive.
Yeah. There's another, I took that pose. That was used from another picture I took on the outside, and luckily the lighting matched myself and the actual photo. But after that cover came out, I started getting on websites that have stock photos, and I was looking for the perfect one with a great background that I could Photoshop an S and clouds out of. So yeah, that's how that whole thing came about.
Again, ingenuity, something you don't normally see as well, because the focus on that picture is different than some of the other ones as well, because it's very much the symbol in the clouds, which is a very evocative image of just like Superman. The logo itself means something.
Exactly.
There's this great line in one of Tom King's Batman comics where he's just like, Batman and Superman swap costumes, and Superman's like, the S stands for hope, and then Batman's like, the bat stands for a bat. Not a lot of logos mean something.
Oh man, good old Batman.
Yeah, but I guess so we've covered a wide breadth of topics here, but in terms of your future as Jonathan Belle, by day, Superman by also brighter day, it seems, because the sun's always shining. Do you have any goals you want to accomplish? Do you have any, because you've been doing your own series of interviews with people, which have been fantastic, of like getting other lesser known creators on. I guess go into that for a second before we go into that question.
Oh yeah, I have my own podcast show where I just try to interview other creators that are just starting out, so people could be aware of them. And but yeah, I guess my goal is to make a living being creative and not have to rely on like a 9-to-5 job. So that's my goal, is to eventually be able to afford to live doing what I love to do.
And that's like, just, again, very admirable. Admiral, not admiral. There's a photo set, get on a ship. It's, I mean, fuck, that's, everyone kind of wants to be able to do that, but not a lot of people, like, everyone says it, not a lot of people actually get to go and do it. And you're making headway with that, and that's just, it's so inspiring, and it's really helpful to see, a character like that be able to impact not just you, but through you, new fans who maybe haven't seen themselves in Superman before, but like, hey, this guy's doing it. He's got a beard and everything, and he's like, he doesn't care. He's like doing these amazing photos. Superman's always seemed uptight to me. He's always seemed kind of lame, but this guy's fucking cool. So that whole idea is so like special, because very much with how I've seen people interpret your art, it's like they've just the feeling of like, oh my god, we discovered fire. It's because you're so used to seeing Superman in one specific way for such a long time, like even such as creation, like you get Siegel and Schuster, then you get the Kurt Swans in like the Silver Age in the 60s, and then you start getting the next big one would be I can't even forget his name, Man of Steel. John Byrne, right. Yeah, there we go. take my fan card away. You get John Byrne, and you get all these like images of Superman. It's always the same kind of pose. Obviously, same kind of basic white guy with black hair, but you bring a new layer to it. But it's still Superman. It's still the exact. You can throw a couple glasses on you, and I can see you like acting sheepish in the Daily Planet. Like, there's no difference there, but there's like. It's a different flavor, I guess you could say. And I think that's important because it's a step towards making, like you mentioned earlier, the symbol bigger than just one guy.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I've had people too, they tell me that too, like, oh, I've always thought of Superman as a dork, and what you're doing with him has made me realize, like, the morals of it and stuff like that. And that's always really nice to hear because, like I said, I don't want people to think of Superman as just some powerful guy, but to dig deeper into who he is and how we can apply like kindness and compassion and caring about people in real life, and just using the symbol as a platform to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess as an artist, do you feel like, because we're kind of in a dry spell at the moment in terms of Superman media, he's had a few appearances on stuff like Supergirl and stuff, but the movies kind of fell apart, and the comics have been doing good under Bendis, which has been a good thing, but even they're controversial with some fans. Do you feel like DC isn't using Superman as well as they could be with different mediums?
I think I don't know. They still might be trying to just figure it out. I mean, I guess the next big thing I'm looking forward to is the DC Black Label one that Miller's going to do, which that should have been out already, but it keeps getting postponed. So that'll be interesting to see how, because I think they're going to totally redo his origin story, aren't they?
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's called Year One. It's going to be his version of like what Superman Year One would be in like this Elseworlds with John Romita Jr. I think part of it is they're going to have him join the military when he was young.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll have to see how that pans out, but I can agree with what you're saying. You would like to see, like, I don't know. I just think that they're trying so hard to please everyone. They're not really sticking to doing something all in all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The people try and make, this is the thing with Superman. That's why he's a tricky character. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well, because the moment you do any interpretation that has even a little bite to it, or is a little bit different to like the Reeve standard, as great as Christopher Reeve was, that's just like the public consensus of what Superman has to be. He kind of has to be old fashioned. He has to be like milquetoast. He has to just be general. Like he can't have strong opinions one way or another. The moment you give him strong opinions one way or another, one side is always going to be alienated. And the problem with Superman is because you want to appeal to everyone because that's what he's about. It's really hard to sometimes find that. Do you try to take some of his bite away from him to make him appeal more because that's what he's meant to be, or do you use the character to make a stand for like a specific set of like moral good and this is what needs to be done?
Yeah, that's a good point. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that if they just tried to do something without having to keep changing up all the time to appease people, they could probably find something awesome.
Yeah, and speaking of something awesome, there's a question to you. I don't know if you had this thought. You probably have. So you've done Superman in photography. Have you ever thought about doing Superman, obviously Superman real life, people who meet you. You ever thought about doing Superman in other mediums? Like maybe doing like a fan film or recording other videos of just like, maybe like motion shorts or something? Like, have you ever thought of branching out your Superman media on your artistic sensibilities? Because it sounds like you fucking learned photography yourself, you learned all of this yourself. I mean, you multitask, do the full Superman thing, super brain, learn whatever you need to do and do it.
Yeah. I'm trying to get more into the video aspect. It's just, videoing myself is a little bit hard. So I'm trying to figure out the best way I could do that. And I'm actually teaching myself After Effects so I can learn how to do like, at least glowing eyes or making myself fly and stuff like that. So I do eventually want to start branching out in video. It's just the logistics of not having anybody film me and me trying to get the shots I need is what's taking the most effort out of it right now.
Yeah, it's just like an extra set of hands is the biggest deal, which is like, it sounds like a simple thing, but for anyone who's actually tried to do anything is like, it's important because you try and set up something on your own. A lot of the chance you might have forgot something, or like the shot might not be lined up, and you go home and you're like, I just wasted a day.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Just don't also ignore the thing he said about After Effects. He can actually fly and shoot heat vision from his eyes. We're just saying this as a government cover up. Don't let them fool you otherwise. All right, so we got some time to kill. Just kind of wrapping up, I guess. We've covered majorly things, but are there any not necessarily Superman related stories? Because I do want to also focus, because point of this sitting with Superman is we're not just sitting with Superman, we're sitting with Jonathan Belle, we're sitting with the man. You got any stories about your life that you feel like have influenced your morality outside of Superman? Like, what drives you as a guy to do all of this, regardless of the comic character?
That's a good question. Basically, I don't know. I think, and this is going to actually end up going back to Superman. It's the whole reason why I decided to do what this is because I just didn't like what I was doing with my life. Like, before I quit to do all this stuff, I worked for the railroad. I worked for a really, really, really popular railroad called Union Pacific. I was a conductor, and I was about 4 years in, and I just couldn't see myself retiring doing that work, and I have done a lot of things. I've been a policeman. I've been a dishwasher. I've been a bartender. I've lived in like 5 or 6 states. I don't even remember now. Like, I just tried to travel around. And the thing that I love doing the most is traveling and like taking photos and like doing Superman stuff. That's what I love to do. But I was always so scared to try to make a living doing it because I didn't go to school for that stuff. Like, I don't have a degree in art design or photography or any of that nature. So I was always scared to try to make money doing it somehow. And I thought I would always be stuck. And then I had to realize we live in a day and age right now where there's like influencers and social media, and how pretty soon we all are going to be walking advertisements for something or other, whether we like it or not. And that's when I finally decided to bite the bullet and be like, hey, well, there's no time like the present. So it took me a while to get over that fear to start at least trying to do what I really want to do out of life. And that's when I decided, like, hey, I should take all the things that I love to do, which is like photography, traveling, Superman, trying to inspire people. I made that list, and I'm like, I need to figure out a way to make a living doing all this stuff that I love to do. And that's why I quit that other job and bought the van and came out here to try to figure it out, because I finally had to get over that fear of failing or not making it work. And that's another reason why I'm saying, like, if I can do it, so can you. It's why I'm doing the tutorials. It's why I'm, sharing with people things about like what works and doesn't work, and how I'm, interact with people on social media and different social media tips and stuff like that, because I want this whole journey to be for me, but I also want it to be for everybody, so that people know, like, it's not going to be an easy thing to do, but I want people to know that if I'm at least trying to do it and sharing what I'm learning along the way, maybe it can inspire somebody else to do what they really want to do out of life. So that's probably been my biggest life lesson or not life lesson, because I'm still learning it, but that's probably been my biggest turning point, is like finally deciding to pursue a road that's going to lead me to doing what I want to do the most out of life.
Right. And I think that's also a key distinction, is you did live a lot. You've seen a lot. You went to places. You worked different jobs. You had time to figure this out. Do you think that experience helped you make this decision? Whereas if you had just started this, you might have always wondered.
I mean, I see your point, but no, not really. I mean, like, honestly, like, so Man of Steel came out in 2013? 2000. Yeah, I think it came out in 2013.
I think so.
So that was like my second year of living in Texas and working for the railroad. And literally, I started searching for probably like a good 5 or 6 months in Oklahoma and all of Fort Worth, Dallas, going to like all these costume stores, trying to like, I would literally go to all these like Joann's Fabrics, which is like a craft store out here, and get all these business cards from people that sew. And I called a lot of people to see if they could actually make that suit for me. And I couldn't find anybody. And I gave up after like 5 or 6 months. And then I stayed stuck there for 4 years. And then when I finally got tired of it, I was like, I'm just going to have to go for this. That's when I like started looking all over again and found that person that had the suit. So I'm glad I got all those different experiences in, because it takes a lot of curiosity out of it. But at the same time, like, I also kind of wish I would have started this a lot earlier. Like, I could have been taking more pictures with just my sweatshirt and the cape. I could have been doing more Superman themed pictures, even if I was doing the New 52 Superman. But I never did, because I was so comfortable in the jobs that I've had. Even though I didn't like them, the money, the security, it was comfortable. And yeah, so that's the thing, is that I do wish I would have started the Superman stuff sooner, and who knows where I would have been now, but I'm glad that I actually started. Yeah,
I think that's the key thing, is like, everyone's got different points, but it's still that leap. To make that leap at all is incredibly brave. And I think you shouldn't sat that short at all, because that, no matter how much time you take to do that, some people spend their entire lives and they never take that leap. So 4 years is nothing. Do you feel that, I guess, to anyone listening who maybe has been like, oh, hearing all the stuff like this, and doesn't have to relate to Superman, but can just relate to like ambitions, personal goals, or specifically because you're an artist, like artistic merit. Because I know it's very scary for artists to make that leap, because it is such a career where you feel like, oh, there's no money in it, or there's a lot of stigma put on people who want to become artists from people around them. Would you say to people, just in your opinion, like, this isn't meant to be like any like rule, just go for it?
I mean, you have like a little plan. I mean, not everybody.
No, we have a plan.
Well, I mean, like for instance, like I didn't really have a plan. I knew I knew I could live in a car. Like, I guess it just really all depends on your level of comfortability. Like, I slept in a van for like 2 years, and some people can't do that. Like, I took showers at a gym for 2 years in a row, and some people just don't want to do that. So I guess it just depends on how much you're willing to sacrifice. I mean, at the end of the day, I would like to say, go for it, but it also depends on like if you got your turning point or not. I mean, I didn't mention this before because I forgot, but I'm going to say it now. Like, the whole reason why this whole thing started too, because I almost like got in a serious car accident in Texas. I was driving and I did a 180 on the freeway across like 3 or 4 lanes of traffic, and I didn't hit not one thing. I didn't even hit the center divider, and I took that so it could have been bad, but luckily it was like rush hour traffic going 60 miles an hour. Did a 180 and dodged all these cars and came within like an inch or so from hitting the divider. And after that, it just kind of gave me my whole like wake up call. Like, I could have died or been severely injured, and then I couldn't have done anything. Like, what if I would have been paralyzed or something? Or, like, I totally walked away from that 100% unharmed. And that happened in August. I knew my lease was up for my apartment in November. So I spent from August to November, like, plotting out where I was going to go. That's when I figured out I was going to move to Seattle for real, and started selling off all my stuff and finding a van to buy. And then by the time my lease was up, I, didn't renew the lease, and I walked into my job and quit my job. And that's when I moved out to Seattle. But like I said, like the planning I meant, because I did van life, but I had to go on all these websites and figure out, like, where do people park their vans in Seattle that they don't get arrested, and what are like the safest places to sleep around in your van, and what cities were safe and what cities weren't, and, where all the gyms are at for showers, and, this and that. I did research on all that stuff, but the short answer to answer your question is, yeah, I mean, you can always find a job, you know, like you could always work for what you want to do for and like take that leap. And, you know, I still have working a job while I'm trying to figure this out. But I think the longer you spend time running away from what you feel like you should be doing, you know, the more that it's taken away from what you actually can be doing. And sometimes you just got to take that leap and go for it. And if it doesn't work out, you know, it doesn't work out. And if I have to say, if in 5 or 10 years from now, if I'm saying it didn't work out, then, you know, at least I tried it.
At least you had that experience in life.
Because I could always find a job. You could always, you know, so many jobs. You could always find a job if you're worried about it. It just all depends on your level of comfortability. You know, like if you have to take a pay cut, if you have to take a different job to have more time to do things, if you got to move back in with a roommate or your parents or something, because it's not easy to part with money, you know, but it is what it is.
Like, it doesn't guarantee happiness even if you are rich. Like, even if you do a job where, like, it's more comfortable, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be fulfilled as a person. Because, like, at the end of the day, sure, you can afford more things, but, like, are you doing anything with, like, you as a guy?
Yeah, so my job at the railroad, my first year, I was, like, making pretty much I made over $100,000 my first year. Yeah, but like there was one time I worked like 18 days straight, like 18, pretty much over 12-hour days straight for that. For like the whole, like one summer was spent at work. I was at work all the time. I had no time to take photos. I had no time to do this. Like I was always at work, and I hated it. I'm like, I don't want to live the rest of my life at work. Yeah, I'm making a lot of money, and I live in a city that has a decent cost of living. But I had no free time, and I'm like, I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. I don't want to do that. So, you know, everybody has their own ways of money buying happiness, but my free time and being artistic was squashed, and I just wanted it back. And that's when I had to decide, when I almost got in an accident, it's like, it's more important for me to live life being happy and doing what I love to do than to not do that.
I think you made a lot of other people as well happier as a result of that one decision, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Is that one decision in your life has literally affected thousands of people who've seen your stuff.
Yeah, that you're just blowing my mind with that.
I'm telling you,
I like never thought about it that way, and now I'm just like, oh dang, you're probably right.
That's the power of the yes. That's it. That's why we're all here. That's something that all connects us, people from different parts of the world, and everything is just little red and yellow and blue logo through on a chest by two Jewish kids in the 40s, and now here we are all connected from like, fuck man, that was a good idea.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So I guess then closing up, because this has been fantastic, and we can only blow people's minds and give life advice so often. I mean, we've got to keep on wanting more. Before we open up your book, when are you gonna write your book or your movie? Because man, you have a story to tell. This is cinematic right now. I guess closing is, for anyone who is listening to this and is still somehow skeptical of Superman and what he means, is where you are today, where you are now, Jonathan. What does Superman mean to you?
To me, it means, if I could just sum it up in one thing, it'd pretty much say the golden rule. You know, do unto others as you want other people to do unto you. And the second part of that would be the whole, until proven guilty, just try to treat people innocent until proven guilty, and not guilty until proven innocent, especially with first impressions. And just to be kind and not expect anything bad. Like, if you're going to do something out of kindness, and do it out of kindness, period. Not to brag about it, not to, say that you did something kind and expect a bunch of gratitude for it. It's pretty much trying to be a better version of yourself every day.
And that's what being super means. All right, it's right there in the name. Jonathan, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed this immensely. And I want to share this as much as possible for people. So where's your stuff? Where can people find you?
If they just go into Google and type in my name, Jonathan, last name Belle. If they type those two names in together, they'll find all my stuff will pop up. Jonathan Belle.
Oh, that was good. That was a good line there. That was like a video game announcer. It's Jonathan Belle. I like that sound clip. Damn, man. So yes, we've been sitting with Superman. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope you listened well. Please do keep an eye out for any other stories where fans will have, and check out all of Jonathan's stuff. He's doing great work. And a big takeaway from this is do your own things as well. Share your stuff. Get in contact. Let us know what you're doing, and we'll be happy to help in any way we can. Just to share some good vibes. There's some good creativity. That's another thing from you as well. The good vibes. Yeah, pretty much it. As always, we hope you've enjoyed. Take it easy, folks.